There is no cheaper, more romantic way to own a food business than a food truck. Skip the crippling restaurant lease. Skip the huge staff. You buy a truck, you park it where the crowds are, you sell tacos or burgers or grilled cheese out the window, and you keep the fat margins for yourself. A single grilled sandwich might cost you $2 in ingredients to make and sell for $9. That is a 70% gross margin, the kind of number a normal restaurant would dream about. On paper, every single order looks like a small win. You are your own boss, on wheels, following the money wherever it goes. No landlord breathing down your neck, no $1,000 a day dining room to fill, just you, a griddle, and a hungry crowd. It sounds like the lowest risk, highest freedom way into the food world that exists. A whole restaurant, minus the scary parts, for a fraction of the price. It is not. Here is the truth. After all the real costs are paid, a typical food truck keeps only about 6 to 9 cents of every dollar it takes in. Roughly 40% of them do not survive their first few years in business. And the ones that do survive often make almost no money at the window at all. Real profit hides somewhere most people never look, and the whole business is decided by two things that have nothing to do with how good your food is. So let us open the real books on the food truck. What one actually costs to run. Why that beautiful per sandwich margin is a lie by the end of the month, and why the trucks that get rich are barely selling to the lunch crowd at all. The buy-in. Start with getting in, because the truck is only the first bill. You can buy a used truck, build a custom one, or rent. All in. Starting a food truck usually runs somewhere between $50,000 and $250,000, depending on the truck and how it is outfitted. A modest setup might start near $75,000. A gleaming custom build, wrapped in artwork with a full commercial kitchen inside, can sail past $200,000 before you have sold a single item. That truck is almost always the single biggest cost. But here is what nobody tells the dreamer. In most cities, you are not legally allowed to just cook in your truck and park wherever you like. You are required to have a commissary, a licensed commercial kitchen that serves as your base, where you prep and store food to meet health codes. That commissary is a fixed monthly rent you pay whether you sell one taco or 1,000. On top of that come the permits and licenses, and this is where cities get strange. In some places, the paperwork costs a few $100s. In a city like Boston, the licensing and permits for a food truck can run past $17,000 a year. So there are several tiers to this business. The single owner-operated truck, one person chasing the lunch rush. The multi-truck operator, running several at once. The truck that is secretly a catering company. And the truck that exists mostly as a rolling advertisement for a future restaurant or a franchise brand. But whatever tier you are in, look at what you are actually buying. Not a cheap little restaurant, a mobile kitchen, a stack of city permits that decide where you can even park, and a commissary lease for a kitchen you barely cook in. And the food, the part you care about, is the easy part. What you inherit. You inherit a business with a very specific, very punishing shape. First, you inherit the commissary requirement. That licensed base kitchen is a fixed cost that never stops. A bill that lands every month no matter how many slow days you had. You are paying rent on a building you are rarely even inside, and in many cities you legally cannot skip it, because the health department will not issue your permit without proof that you have a commissary agreement in place. Second, you inherit the permit maze, and it is more than just a cost. Those permits and local ordinances dictate where you are allowed to park and when. Many cities deliberately restrict food trucks, keeping them a certain distance from brick-and-mortar restaurants, or banning them from the busiest blocks entirely, to protect the businesses that pay property rent. So the city itself actively limits your access to the very crowds you need. The busiest, most profitable corner in town may be one you are legally forbidden from parking on, precisely because a restaurant is already paying rent there. Third, and this is the big one, you inherit the location problem. A restaurant has one permanent address, and its regulars always know where to find it. A food truck has no such thing. Your revenue depends entirely on foot traffic that you do not control, and must re-win every single day. A great corner on a sunny Friday can be a gold mine. The same truck, on a dead Tuesday in the wrong spot, can lose money. And your costs do not care which day it is, because that is the fourth thing you inherit. Fixed overhead that runs regardless. The truck payment, the commissary rent, the insurance, the permits, all of it costs exactly the same on your best day and your worst day. A packed Friday and an empty Tuesday carry the identical overhead. Hold that, because it is the trap. The revenue layers. A food truck has several income streams, and their order is the whole surprise. Layer 1, the walk-up window. Somebody strolls up at lunch, orders, and pays. Per item, the margins here look glorious. Often 60 to 75% gross on the food itself, but this is also the most fragile, most location-dependent, lowest volume income there is, and after all the overhead, these everyday street stops often net only 10 to 20%. This is the business everyone pictures. It is rarely where the money is made. Layer 2, and this is the real profit engine: catering and private events. A booked wedding, a corporate lunch, a birthday party. Here the game completely changes. You have a guaranteed head count, a guaranteed payment, often a minimum spend, no competition parked next to you, and almost no wasted food because you know exactly how many people you are feeding. Catering jobs routinely run 30% net margins or higher, far above a walk-up lunch. It is common for a successful truck to make more than half of its entire revenue from catering. Some of the best operators quietly treat the public truck as a moving advertisement and run their real business off a booking calendar. One good booked event can be worth a week of chasing the lunch crowd. A single wedding or corporate order can quietly do more for your month than 20 perfect days on a street corner. Layer 3, festivals and large events. These bring huge crowds and huge volume, but they carry a sharp double edge, because the event organizer often takes a large cut of your sales, sometimes anywhere from 10 to 50% of what you earn that day, just for the right to be there. Layer 4, the high-margin extras. Drinks, sides, and add-ons carry the best margins of anything on the menu, and a good operator pushes them hard, because a soda and a side can quietly double the profit on an order. Layer 5, the brand and the following. The smartest trucks build a loyal audience, a text list, or a big social media following they can summon to a location with a single message. That following is a real asset, arguably the single most valuable thing the whole operation builds. It is also what turns a truck into a brand that can open a restaurant, or license itself, or sell a whole lot of merchandise down the line. Here is the thing almost nobody starting out understands. The food is the easy part. The high per item margin you fell in love with gets eaten alive by the fixed overhead, the commissary, the permits, the truck, the insurance, all of it running whether you sell or not. And the trucks that actually make real money are barely relying on the lunch window at all. They make it on catering, on booked events with guaranteed crowds. Listen to that again. You are not really running a little restaurant on wheels. You are running a catering company that also happens to gamble on street traffic, while carrying the fixed cost of a commissary kitchen the law makes you rent, but you rarely cook in. That romantic image, the truck on the corner feeding a happy lunch line, is often the least profitable thing the whole operation does. Once you see that, everything shifts. Your truck is not the business. It is a rolling billboard, a brand builder, and a catering vehicle. Every window sale is marketing. The booking is the money. The ledger. Turn the page to what leaves the account, because the costs are relentless, and they mostly do not stop. Start with the food itself, which typically eats 25 to 35% of every dollar. Then labor, another 20 to 30% if you have any employees at all. Then the fixed monthly overhead that never sleeps. The truck payment. The commissary rent, $300 to $3,000 a month depending on the city. The insurance, which can run $2,500 to $5,500 a year. The permits and licenses, renewed annually. The fuel, and the propane, and the generator, $600 to $1,500 a month, more in summer when the refrigeration and the air conditioning run all day. Then the sneaky ones. Spoilage, 2 to 5% of your food, lost to the trash, and the event fees, which at a big festival can quietly claim 10 to 50% of everything you sell that day. Now notice the squeeze. Your headline margin per item is fantastic, 60 to 75%, but by the time all that fixed overhead is paid, a well-run truck is left with only 6 to 9% of the money that came in, and that thin margin assumes good days. Your costs are fixed and constant. Your revenue swings wildly with the location, the weather, and the day of the week. That is the shape of the ledger, and it is brutal to anyone who thought this was easy. The trap. Here is the trap, and it is the exact opposite of what the dreamer believes. People come to the food truck because they think it is a cheaper, lower-risk restaurant. It is not. It is a different set of fixed costs wrapped around a customer base you cannot hold on to. Think about what actually happened when you chose the truck over the restaurant. You escaped the expensive restaurant lease, yes, but in exchange, you took on a truck payment, a mandatory commissary rent, insurance, and a pile of permits, and all of those run every single month, whether you sell anything or not. You did not escape fixed overhead, you just changed its name. And here is the crueler half. In trading the building for the truck, you gave up the one thing the building gave you: a permanent location. A restaurant sits on its one corner, and its regulars find it there every single day. Your truck has to go out and re-win its spot every morning, in a city that restricts where you can park, against other trucks fighting for the same corners, at the mercy of the weather. You took on the fixed costs of a restaurant, and gave up the stable location of a restaurant, and you called it freedom. That is why roughly 40% do not make it, not because the food was bad, but because the overhead was fixed, and the crowd was not. To understand this business, go back much further than you would think, all the way to 1866, and a cattle rancher named Charles Goodnight. After the Civil War, the beef market in Texas was booming, but the cattle had to be driven hundreds of miles across open country, with no railroads and no towns, for months at a time, and the men doing the driving had to eat. So Goodnight took a durable surplus army wagon and rebuilt it into something new. He bolted a large box onto the back, filled it with drawers and shelves for utensils, tableware and spices, and fitted it with a hinged lid that folded down into a flat work surface, a cook's counter on wheels. He hung a water barrel on the side and stored beans, coffee, cornmeal, salted meat, and biscuits, food that would not spoil on a long trail. Cowboys called good hearty food chuck, so they called his invention the chuck wagon. It was, in every meaningful way, the first food truck, a kitchen that traveled to wherever the hungry people were. Now spin forward almost a century and a half, to the modern boom. In 2008, in Los Angeles, a chef named Roy Choi put Korean-Mexican fusion tacos on a truck he called Kogi, and did something clever. Instead of a fixed spot, he announced where the truck would appear next using social media, and crowds chased it around the city. That one idea, the truck as a moving, buzzing social event, ignited the entire gourmet food truck craze that swept America. But notice, across 150 years, the core idea never changed. The whole business, from Goodnight's wagon to Choi's tacos, has always been about one thing: bringing the hot kitchen directly to where the hungry people already are, and getting paid for the convenience, the death spiral. So watch what happens when someone forgets what this business actually is, and tries to turn a food truck into an empire built on hype. Around 2015, one gourmet food truck company, built on a single popular concept, did something almost unbelievable. It went public on the stock market, and at its peak, investors valued this little company at roughly $100 million. Sit with that, $100 million. The catch was the size of the actual business behind that number. The entire operation was 4 trucks. Just 4 trucks, feeding lunch lines. Meanwhile, the company was bleeding money. Over the course of 9 months, it lost more than $4 million on only a few $1,000,000 in sales. Its own balance sheet showed about $1 million in assets against nearly $3 million in debts. A well-known market commentator pointed at it as one of the purest signs of irrational market excess he had ever seen. A publicly traded food truck business, 4 trucks, valued at over $100 million. For a business that small and that unprofitable, the number was pure fantasy, a story investors wanted to believe rather than anything the trucks could ever earn. The company made grand promises. It would franchise across the nation. It would conquer stadiums, military bases, and college campuses. It would become the giant of its little corner of the food world. None of it happened. Losses kept mounting. Its stock collapsed. The company changed its name and lunged at desperate acquisitions to look like it was growing, and the $100 million valuation melted away into a worthless penny stock. The lesson is the lesson of this entire business. A single food truck can earn a good living and tell a wonderful story, but the economics do not magically scale into an empire on excitement alone. The moment this company stopped focusing on the food, the location, and the catering, and started selling a fantasy to investors instead, its fate was sealed. So who actually thrives at this, and how? The winners understand what business they are really in. 1. They make their money on catering and events, not the window. They treat the daily street service as marketing and brand building, and they chase the booked gigs, the weddings, the corporate lunches, the private parties, where the crowd is guaranteed and the waste is near zero. That is where the real margin lives. 2. They obsess over location. They ruthlessly cut the dead spots that lose money and lock down the reliable, high-traffic locations and routes. Since the rent is the same on a slow day, filling the good spots and dropping the bad ones swings the whole month. 3. They build a following. A loyal text list or social media audience is the one thing that lets a truck fill a slow stop on demand, and repeat customers who come back week after week are the single biggest factor in long-term survival. 4. They keep the menu tight. Fewer items on the board means faster service, less waste, lower food cost, and a line that keeps moving. A short, focused menu beats a sprawling one on almost every measure that matters. The truck with 6 things it makes brilliantly will nearly always outlast the one with 40 things it makes slowly. And 5. They control the fixed overhead. They right-size the commissary, they do not overbuild the truck, and they watch every permit and fee, because in a business with only 6 to 9 cents of margin per dollar, the fixed costs are what decide whether you live or die. None of that is about loving to cook. It is catering, location, a loyal following, a tight menu, and controlled overhead. In a business this thin, that discipline is the entire edge. So does owning a food truck work. Let us run it. And treat this as a model, not a real truck. You run a tight taco truck with a focused menu, a loyal following you can text, and a strong calendar of booked catering events. In a good month, your booked gigs deliver guaranteed, high-margin revenue with almost no waste. Your street stops at your best locations stay busy and feed your brand, and your disciplined overhead lets a healthy share of it all fall to the bottom line. Run like this, a food truck can really clear 20% margins or more, and even grow into a second truck, a restaurant, or a real brand. That is the good version. Now the other one, you run it as a cheap little restaurant, parking wherever, living entirely on the walk-up window. Your food is really great, but a few rainy weeks in a row and a couple of dead locations leave you short, while the commissary rent, the truck payment, the insurance, and the permits all come due on time, indifferent to your slow month. At 6 to 9% margins, there is no cushion at all. A single bad month can wipe out the thin profit of several good ones, and there is nothing left over to absorb the shock. One bad stretch, and you are one of the roughly 40% that folds. But here is the real verdict. A food truck is not a bet on your cooking. It is a bet on location, overhead discipline, and catering, wrapped around a kitchen you are legally required to rent but rarely use. Winners are the ones who treated it coldly, as a catering and brand business that uses a truck as marketing, and who never confused a busy lunch line with actual profit. So the honest answer is this. In the right hands, with catering revenue, sharp locations, a loyal following, and lean overhead, a food truck can be a wonderful business and the start of something much bigger. But it lives on razor-thin margins, chasing a crowd it cannot control, carrying fixed costs that never blink, in a business where the beautiful per-sandwich profit is a mirage by the end of the month. It is a catering and overhead business dressed up as a taco stand, and the ground shifts under it every single day, one location, one booking, one forecast at a time. So look again at what you really bought. Not a cheap restaurant, not freedom from rent and overhead. That is the fantasy, the truck on the corner, the fat margin on every sandwich, the open road. You bought a mobile kitchen you are legally required to base in a commissary you rarely cook in. You bought a stack of city permits that decide where you are even allowed to park. And you bought a daily gamble on a crowd you do not control, with fixed costs that come due whether that crowd shows up or not. The food, the thing you actually love, is the easy part, and often the least profitable one. A food truck does not really make its money selling tacos to a lunch crowd. It makes it on the catered wedding, the corporate booking, and the loyal followers who show up because you told them where to park, while the truck itself, and the food everyone came for, is just the rolling billboard that got you the gig.